Hello and welcome to Reporters Plus. Today we take a deep dive into the state of West Bank politics. Discontent and even defiance to the Palestinian Authority and its president Mahmoud Abbas is reaching boiling point. One case has crystallized those feelings, that of opposition figure Nizar Banat. For years he criticized the endemic corruption that defined life in the territories, and last June he was killed at home in a raid by security forces. His family and supporters are now honoring his legacy and have picked up his fight. Gwendoline Debono and Laurent with Josh Vardy sent this report.
القيادة الفلسطينية التقليدية هذه اللي حكمت الضفة الغربية اليوم طول عمرها هيك بتتاجر بكل شيء. طول عمرهم مرتزقة وشغالين هيك.
The final video update from Nizar Banat, who seemed to know he was speaking to his audience for the last time. 3 days later, this political activist was killed by Palestinian security forces. With more than 100,000 followers on social media, Nizar Banat spoke out against corruption in the Palestinian Authority.
خلص صار في عندنا جزيرة سكانية، كتلة سكانية موجودة في الضفة الغربية ما لهاش علاقة بباقي المجتمع. يعطيكم العافية.
Nizar Banat died while being transferred to hospital by the security forces. He had been arrested and carried to a car unconscious. These images, taken from surveillance cameras, form part of the case file. Nizar Banat's cousins, Mohammed and Hussein, witnessed his death. All three of them were asleep at home when the men burst in during the night.
Nizar was sleeping there, facing the wall. When the group entered, one guy with an iron bar stood there and started hitting him as hard as he could. At that moment, I guess Nizar didn't think what was happening was real. All of a sudden, he woke up and said very slowly, "What's going on?" When Nizar said, "What's going on?" the rest of the unit rushed at him. They surrounded him. There were at least 9 or 10 of them in the corner, and they were beating him like crazy. He started to breathe with more difficulty. His breath was short. The beatings didn't stop. They brought him over here. His hands were tied up. They were holding him. They started hitting his head against the wall without stopping, more than 5 or 6 times.
He couldn't stand up. They had to carry him.
At first, the Palestinian Authority claimed that Nizar Banat died of natural causes. An autopsy requested by the family showed that his death was caused by 42 blows from iron bars.
Seriously, was this Nizar bin Laden? He never threw a stone, he never fired a bullet, he never threatened them with weapons, nothing like that. He was a political opponent. Nizar was in politics, and so yes, he criticized people. He fought them with words, he criticized their corruption, and he wanted to change things, that's all.
After Nizar's death, protesters chanted a new slogan on the streets of Ramallah. This is the first time Palestinians have directly targeted their leaders. These protesters are marching towards the presidential palace where Mahmoud Abbas lives. Elected in 2005 for a 4-year term, the president of the Palestinian Authority has never left power. After cancelling the first general elections planned in 16 years, the death of Nizar Banat, a candidate in those elections, acted as a catalyst.
I came to protest against the Palestinian Authority, against their repression and oppression. We are in the streets because Nizar Banat was killed.
Every demonstration like this is broken up. The police are not visible today. Instead, protesters are being targeted by members of Fatah, the political party of Mahmoud Abbas that dominates the Palestinian Authority. They have been taking away phones and physically intimidating those shouting anti-Abbas slogans.
I'm speaking out. I'm expressing my opinion. It's my opinion.
Some of the protesters are eventually taken away by plainclothes police officers. Others are pepper sprayed by Mahmoud Abbas supporters.
It's not possible. What is this? We speak out and we get hit? We get beaten up because we're speaking out? According to what laws?
The protesters all accuse their leaders of corruption. The Palestinian Authority is the largest employer in the West Bank. Nepotism rules, the management of the budget is opaque, and people are under pressure.
It goes up and up. They've been keeping us in check for a long time, like taxes, for example. They take tax from us, but where does it go? We don't know. It's useless because of the corruption. Look at the state of the roads. They distribute projects among themselves. They own the restaurants. They own everything in this country. Where does the money we get from abroad go? They use it in shops and restaurants, and we stand around with our mouths open. Enough is enough. We're fed up. There has to be change, but we're here now because someone has just been killed.
Two visions of Palestine face each other at demonstrations. On one side, protesters opposed to the corruption and authoritarian drift of their leaders, and on the other, the supporters of Mahmoud Abbas's Fatah, who accuse the crowd of playing into the hands of their sworn enemies, Hamas, the Islamist party in power in Gaza.
If Hamas gets into power, we will all pay the price. We also condemn what happened to Nizar. We too, the sons of Fatah, want justice to be done. But not like you, who are insulting Mahmoud Abbas. You're calling him a traitor, and that's too much. You may hate him, criticize him, but you should be ashamed to insult him like that. Shame.
I'm a Palestinian. I couldn't care less about Hamas. I don't care about Fatah. What's your problem?
They killed Nizar in Hebron. Tomorrow it could be me or anyone. No one would know who fired the shot.
Around 60 protesters were arrested. Among them, teachers, poets, activists, and students. Some have been charged with taking part in an illegal gathering. Officials from the Palestinian Authority's main financial backer, the European Union, have spoken out against this wave of repression. But the authorities paid little attention, to Hanan Ashwari's dismay. 2 years ago, this Palestinian political figure resigned from the executive committee of the PLO, the Palestinian Liberation Organization. She says she grew weary of the increasingly autocratic atmosphere and that international condemnation has had no discernible effect on Mahmoud Abbas.
There was a lot of pressure on the leadership, on the president in particular, to repair relations with the public, with civil society. And so he went through the motions. What he did was he invited Select through one of his minions to invite some Select civil society leaders to meet with the president. So it became a PR exercise. Because there was no agenda, there was no purpose, there was no commitment. It was just to meet and to listen to the president and to go back. But then, what came out of it? So we met as civil society organizations and leaders and so on, and we prepared a policy statement based on principles and so on, including principles of transparency, respect, rule of law, and so on. And there has been no response at all. So people are quite disappointed. I mean, I could have told them I resigned because I tried change from within for years, and nobody would listen.
While the government cowers behind its security apparatus, the repression of critics has quietly continued. 4 months after Nizar Banat's funeral, a remembrance service has been organized in Ramallah by his family. Around 15 Palestinian police officers have been posted at the entrance of the hall. 2 of Nizar Banat's children are present alongside his brother Hassan. The audience is filled with young Palestinians who took to the streets right after the killing. Najla Zaytoun, a journalist, was beaten up by police during those first rallies. Today, she says the protest may have stopped, but not the intimidation from security forces.
They threatened me with prosecution, and some of them threatened me with rape. The threats continue today. 40 days after Nizar's death, I was threatened again. I was injured, and my arm was still bandaged then, not quite recovered. They threatened me, saying, "We broke your arm that time. Next time, it'll be your head." They still have my phone. They didn't give it back to me. They even continue their provocations with my phone. They publish private photos and conversations. I really don't feel safe. They hacked my Instagram and have Instagram stories under my name saying I felt desperate and wanted to kill myself. There were several of them watching me, filming me at the children's school, at university, at my workplace. Even today, inside here, there are people we have learned to recognize who are present and filming us right now.
A few months later, the Palestinian Authority's top officials have gathered to commemorate the death of Saeb Erekat, a key figure in all the major peace talks with Israel. An event filled with pomp and ceremony. Sitting in the front row is Palestinian Prime Minister Mohammed Shtayyeh, considered as one of the potential successors to Mahmoud Abbas. The president himself has sent a pre-recorded speech. 86 years old and in ill health, he hardly ever appears in public anymore. The Prime Minister is now the central mouthpiece of the Palestinian Authority, much more than the president. When asked, Mohammed Shtayyeh says that mistakes were made in the heavy-handed response to protests.
We are also holding people responsible for what happened in Ramallah after the protests. It happened, we don't deny it, but as I said, there are some people who took things beyond the limits. We don't allow that, and we stood fully and totally against that.
Asked about the death of Nizar Banat, the head of the government once again puts the blame down to human error.
One case. This is one single case. We do regret it. It's sad for their family. The man died at the hands of our security. 14 security officers have been arrested, and they are standing trial, and the court is open. It happens, so we are handling the case by the book in the best shape possible.
Nizar Banat's family say the Palestinian Authority's excuses are nonsense. His brother Hassan says Nizar knew he was going to die. He says the officers responsible for the killing carried out orders from higher up in the chain of command.
In the middle of Ramadan, there were shots fired at Nizar's house following a smear campaign against him on social media. All this happened after he sent a letter to the European Union asking them to stop funding the Palestinian Authority. Nizar was one of the signatories. They posted photo montages with Nizar's head on Israeli soldiers. For 2 days, there were dozens of images like that. On the third day, they fired at his home, and then Nizar took refuge at our uncle's house in the south. There we received some anonymous phone calls saying they were going to kill Nizar. They were going to execute him. That kind of thing.
Via intermediaries, the Palestinian Authority offered the family an out-of-court settlement before the trial. The Banat family see it as another humiliation.
They want us to stay quiet, to silence us by giving us all the money we want. But we are a long way from that. They want to offer us things like jobs, important positions, and take care of the costs of looking after Nizar's children. But no, we won't accept their offers. We want a fair trial. We don't want money. You killed a man. What did you expect would happen next? What do you expect from us? That we would accept your money and forget about Nizar? We are faced with a stubborn, authoritarian authority, not one that protects us. It's the authority of monsters, monsters who kill during the night, who beat people up at night and proclaim their innocence by day.
I published one photo of Nizar on social media. My superior told me it was forbidden to publish messages of mourning on social media. He said, regarding Nizar, keep your mourning to yourself. How should I raise my child? I say to my son that his father Hassan is the brother of the martyr Nizar. And when he asks me who killed Nizar, what do I say? The Palestinian Authority? How can I instill in my son a love of his country, a loyalty to his country, when the sons of that country are killing each other?
Across the Hebron region where Nizar Banat was working, the Palestinian Authority is increasingly being held to question. It's not only the repression, but also the feeling that Palestinians have been abandoned in the face of aggression from Israeli settlers.
I do this every morning. I started doing it in 2017, right up to today.
17-year-old Mohammed picks up children from the nearby village to take them to school under Israeli army escort. The path crosses through a settlement. Adult Palestinians are no longer allowed to use it.
This is the road to the village of Tuba, which was closed by the settlers because it leads to their settlement. The aim is to meet the students from Tuba who come with the Israeli army escort. We accompany the students from Tuba to the school so they can study. Since 2017, I've seen many incidents happen. Children attacked with stones, some bleeding from the head, others threatened, all to make them stop going this way. Due to these provocations, they end up being afraid for their lives. Some of them are thinking about stopping school. Some of them have actually done it. I'm here to encourage them, because we're living under occupation, that's the reality. There's nothing we can do about it but face it and carry on.
It affects the students a lot. They get up very early in the morning, they get ready, they wait for the army, and they walk a long distance from their homes to where the army meets them. Sometimes the army is late, so they arrive late to school. After school, they have to wait a long time for the army, and they go home worn out, exhausted, and hungry. They're depressed and frustrated, and it shows in their results.
The violence is increasing. This year, the Israeli settlers have become much more aggressive. We had buildings there. They burned them down. They uprooted the olive trees in our crops and attacked the sheep. I want the Palestinian Authority to at least show us some support, to come here, defend us, and say they're ready to support us. When there's an incident, the Palestinian Authority should come to us.
Here, the two-state solution is now perceived as an impossible goal. The Israeli government sees these dwindling hopes and a weakened Palestinian Authority as working in their favor. Former director of Israeli domestic intelligence, Ami Ayalon, thinks that this is a major strategic error.
More and more Palestinians see Abu Mazen as a traitor, as a cooperator with the Israelis. And I remember when I was the director of the Shin Bet, we cooperated with the Palestinian organizations in order to plan together how shall we fight terror, Palestinian terror, Jewish terror. And they used to tell me every time, we are fighting against our brothers, we are locking them, we are interrogating them, only because we believe that in the end of the road, we shall achieve independence. We shall create a Palestinian state alongside Israel. The moment that we shall not believe, the moment that Palestinians in the street shall not believe, the moment that will not be able to go to the market, to shop, because I will be afraid from the mob in the street, forget about us. And this is exactly what happened. And we see it every day. Oh, it is very, very dangerous when you face a society that in their eyes has nothing to lose.
The idea of a sovereign Palestinian state is slowly crumbling, and with it, the Palestinian Authority, mired in corruption and plagued by internal strife. Some Palestinians have decided to fight back. This is Balata, the largest refugee camp in the West Bank. 1 square kilometer holds 30,000 residents, and the Palestinian Authority has almost lost control over the whole area. As night falls, the camp prepares to welcome back one of their own after 17 years in an Israeli prison. To greet him, militiamen from armed factions decide to march on the camp borders. As soon as shots are fired, Palestinian Authority forces push them back inside Balata. They're careful not to enter themselves. Any incursion could easily escalate the volatile situation. In the crowd, wearing civilian clothes, is Ahmad, not his real name. We have obscured his identity.
They're coming back. The people are welcoming a prisoner, and the authorities don't like it. So Palestinian security forces are throwing tear gas at those who are welcoming him.
Like many in Balata, he comes from a family affiliated to Fatah, the party controlling the Palestinian Authority. He chose a different path, instead siding with the Islamic Jihad group, a radical satellite of Hamas.
The political situation in Balata is getting tense. There is a rift between the Palestinian Authority and the people of Balata. It's a serious political crisis. We have many people who came from Fatah, but said enough is enough. I'm going to the resistance. Fatah now is pacifism. Always pacifism. I don't believe in peaceful resistance when the Israeli occupation only increases, attacks on Jerusalem, on Sheikh Jarrah, on Balata, on Gaza. So I chose a different path because I don't want to just throw my hands up and just repeat pacifism, pacifism the whole time.
One of the most powerful men in the camp, Jamal Tiwari, is well aware of this rupture. Affiliated to Fatah, he never mentions the name of the current leader. He only refers to his predecessor.
The spread of weapons in the camp and the increase in problems are causing a terrible relationship with Palestinian security forces. There are more and more weapons in the refugee camps, especially since we have started to manufacture them. It's difficult to live without weapons because we are under attack from the Israeli occupation and the settlers. That's why all our homes should have weapons. There is no option but to resist.
Ahmad says that the cancellation of the presidential and legislative elections was a factor in his decision to join the Islamic Jihad group. Like the majority of young Palestinians, he registered to vote. It would have been his first time. Last April, as the elections approached, one of the most serious contenders to the current government was none other than the nephew of Yasser Arafat. Nasser AlKidwa, a longtime member of Fatah, created a dissident list before the vote. It was a move too far for Mahmoud Abbas, who definitively banished him from Fatah. The fight against corruption was at the heart of his program. Noor Odeh worked for the Palestinian government before joining this new movement.
It's in our hands, and corruption, I think, is one of the main problems that the Palestinian people are faced with as a result of this group. And I mean all kinds of corruption. Only yesterday or 2 days ago, all of us heard about new appointments of some people as ambassadors, which was horrible, horribly done. Why? Because you get someone because she is the daughter of the former ambassador in the same place, for instance.
Ultimately, you feel like you're back to, back in time to, where overlords governed everything and you're just a tenant. I, as a citizen, I am just not part of the calculus. And that there is just a bunch of people who sit together and decide what's best for them, right? So they hire and they fire and they attack and they, and use public funds or divert public funds at will.
Yeah, I mean, the PA now, I think, is facing very serious problems. Nobody is really elected, not anymore. And this is happening while the Palestinian people is financing, actually. The authority is financing the regime. It's called taxations. They pay and they don't have representation. This is a situation that cannot continue. The Palestinian people generally have unusual big problem confronting the PA because simply there is an Israeli occupation. Nevertheless, I think that the overwhelming majority of the Palestinian people are really fed up with the current situation. At some point, there will be an explosion in the face of everybody.
One almost untouchable bubble of freedom still exists in the West Bank: university. Here, all the national political parties are represented and participate in student elections held every year.
Baghdad University is special in the Palestinian community because here there is election, which is a big deal in a country that hasn't had elections in so many years. So, and you can act here, you know? I can do this event even though we had some trouble organizing it.
This communist-affiliated student and his comrades have organized a meeting between Nizar Banat's brothers and the students. Many of them have come to learn more about the life of this opposition figure. The questions quickly turn political.
At the beginning, the public were very involved in this case. There was a protest movement in the street against the murder of Nizar Banat. But we don't see this movement much anymore. Is there less interest, and why?
Public awareness is growing, but the demonstrations on the streets are smaller due to the pressure from the security services. People are afraid because of this security pressure. It's because of this pressure that we are boycotting the trial.
Right now, and people should know what happened with him. And we never heard from his family or brothers about his life and what happened with him. We that have this side of freedom of speech, so everyone can be who they want to be.
The students are fiercely attached to the democratic spirit that accompanies their studies. Many are aware that when they leave, it will be different in the outside world.
Tomorrow I will graduate and I will enter the job market. For most of the jobs I'm applying for, the children of the leaders or people close to the Palestinian Authority will have priority, no matter if I'm more qualified than them for the job. For example, all the job opportunities in the ministries, in the embassies, if you look carefully, they're all reserved for the children of officials. The children of the middle class or whatever don't have the same opportunities. So we go into the private sector or we go work for the occupier and we become their employees. Unfortunately, that's the Palestinian reality.
When asked about the frustrations of these young people, the Palestinian Prime Minister said the Palestinian Authority was doing all it could.
Young people, they have their own dreams, they have their own demands, they want to see things happen. And we did have programs to address employment of young people, but the Israeli measures are very damaging. I feel their anger and we feel what they want. I should tell you that we are establishing a special TV channel to address the issues of young people. It will be specially designed for young people, their aspirations, and so that all Palestinian officials are in a position to listen.
In Ramallah, it's the first day of the trial where 14 Palestinian officers alleged to have murdered Nizar Banat are due before a military court. All plead not guilty. The hearing is open to the public, but a new situation erupts just as proceedings start.
Hussein is in the hands of preventative security.
Hussein, Nizar Banat's cousin and the main witness of Nizar's killing, has been arrested at his home in the middle of the night by Palestinian police. His family, who are boycotting the trial, have come to the court.
I'm here to show that we are present after the Palestinian Authority forces came to arrest the main witness at our house. I'm here to show them that their practices do not scare us. They do not make us afraid.
Hussein Banat was detained for 9 days before being released. The police accuse him of shooting at a house, which he strongly denies.
While they were interrogating and torturing me, they never spoke to me about any shooting. The main subject was Nizar, and making me change my testimony to clear the 14 people who killed Nizar. That was what it was all about, really. At first, they did it with incentives. They offered to send me to the country of my choice. They offered me money, a nice life, but it doesn't work with us. I never thought they would do this, especially because we are the main witnesses of the assassination. How can they think that? I can't understand it. We are caught between two occupiers, the Israeli occupier and the occupier that is the authority of Mahmoud Abbas. I would love to say I feel safe in my homeland, especially in my own home. Home is the place where you should feel safe, and we don't feel safe in our homes anymore. The Palestinian Authority no longer offers us freedom and dignity.
Many Palestinians feel orphaned, deprived of prospects and leadership. Young people are increasingly calling for the dissolution of the Palestinian Authority, at the end of its tether, offering no horizon and no prospect, except that of an increasingly authoritarian Palestine.
Stalemate in Palestine, a report by Gwendoline Debono and Laurent van Stockt with Josh Vardy. Well, you can, of course, watch it again on our website, France24.com. That's it for reporters, but do stay tuned to France 24.